Okay, I'd like to call the January 20th, 2021 meeting of the Cohasset School Committee to order. As with all of our recent meetings, this otherwise in-person public meeting is being held virtually via Zoom, given Governor Baker's declaration of a state of emergency in the Commonwealth. This meeting is being streamed live on Facebook and on Cohasset 143 TV. Would all committee members that are present please indicate so in roll call? Mrs. Colery.
Present.
Mr. Kearney.
Present.
Mrs. Marr.
Present.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Present.
Present. Craig McClellan. All committee members are present. Meeting was convened at 6:06 p.m. First agenda item is the public comment section. Again, this is a section of the agenda reserved for discussion of topics that are not on the agenda. If you have something to add that's not on the agenda, please do so now. Otherwise, just wait until we get to your topic in tonight's meeting. I'll just give it a second to see if any points are raised in the Q&A feature. Okay, don't see any, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the superintendent's report, which we're going to, which will include a fairly hopeful and wonderful announcement, but I leave it to you to give that to us, Dr. Sullivan, our superintendent of schools.
Thank you, Craig. I don't know if it's an announcement. It's some discussions regarding it, but
Yeah.
there's some hope in there. And I should say I don't have one of the agenda items on the superintendent's report clearly is preliminary discussion regarding full-time in-person learning at the elementary schools. So I'm going to wait to talk about that when we get to that agenda item. And I don't really have a giant amount of updates at this point right now, other than stating the obvious. We're in a really tough time as a society, as a town, and clearly as a school community, as we deal with the uptick in COVID cases, and we try to make sure that we're adhering to all of our protocols, which have been successful, but also not being blind to the fact that we are in a pandemic and it's a very tough time, and trying to urge everyone to keep their social distance, to mask when they're around others, and to really be conscious of interactions and making sure that they're healthy and appropriate interactions in terms of the COVID protocols. So hopefully the community feels I've been communicating and updating folks appropriately so that what's happening. I'll continue to be transparent with those updates, and we've been managing to continue the learning in our schools, and there's been some great things happening at the schools while we've been able to afford the community that. But we are being very mindful of where we are and cautious. So I just want folks to know that. One good thing that happened recently is the meeting of our Superintendent's Advisory Council. I thought it was a really productive meeting when we looked at some data. I'm sure Jake will talk about that. And that's actually where I'd like to start the update. So we have Jake Squatrito, who is a junior in Cohasset High School, who I know he's spoken here one time before, and glad to have you back, Jake, to update on where we are. As I had mentioned last time, or it was just after that, we went on the 2-week break from sports to look at where our quarantining scenario was, and we did look at all that data, and the data didn't lead to any positives. And thankfully, working with our health officials, we determined that we would cautiously start sports again. So it's nice to know there's a basketball game happening as we speak, and I know a lot of folks are watching that live and streaming, and hopefully with one eye on that and one eye on this. But it's nice to hear some happiness about that, and we're glad that we can cautiously move forward with it at this point. Anyway, back to Jake. So Jake, I'll let you update on anything you'd like to talk about, and of course, if you want to talk a little bit about our meeting and what came from it, that'd be wonderful too. But I leave that to you. So Jake, take it away.
Yeah, so what we mostly talked about last time was looking at the data from our survey where you had to rank like what was most important or least concerning to you regarding this school year. And we found that really the thing that was most worrisome to people was stress, and then the rest was kind of split among all the other issues that we had listed. So we just talked about ways to ways to address that and what we think could maybe be the cause of it. And we basically want to get real real data from discussions with people and interactions with them to understand what's behind that instead of just making up our own extrapolation from that.
Yeah, that's great. Anything else you want to update on, Jake, in terms of just things that are happening? And of course, I'd always could turn it over to the school committee to ask any questions you might want to Jake. But anything else to update from your interactions and your peers or anything?
I haven't really had a chance to talk to people about it a lot. I know that, like we actually discussed this in the meeting, it's like January and February, which is always just like a generally stressful time. So who knows if that's the reason why or if it's just because of everything going on. But yeah, it'll be interesting to find out what's going on. And, we seem like really dedicated to addressing it, which I think is good.
I agree. And anything else like about just how your peers are doing in general, or anything you want to bring up, feel free to. And I guess I'd lend it to the school committee to ask any questions you have of Jake as well. This is, clearly, as Jake said, this is never an easy time. Never mind pandemic. This is just a hard time in general for everyone. I think we get into sort of the doldrums of the winter, and your studies get a little harder, and it's dark earlier, so it's a tougher time to do anything. And throw in the pandemic, it adds an extra element. So I don't know if any questions from the team. We are, I think, really optimistic about breaking into some study groups and doing some surveying of various kids. We have 6 members of the team, and like I said, we're adding 2 middle school members in February, and we'll be doing a similar survey. But to get to the root of what indeed is, where is the stress coming from, and then to think of some positive information that we can provide potentially for staff regarding how some of our remote learning might be contributing to that, and what positive steps that students are seeing happening within the remote learning at the middle and high school level that is that's positive. Maybe we should do more in that regard. And then also some of the things that might be adding to the stress that perhaps staff at the high school in particular, because it's a high school group survey, can look at. And I should say it's always neat to bring in the Deer Hill students as well. We're able to do that, I think, a couple of times last year. So we'll look to try to get some voice from the older elementary anyway, as we move forward in the next coming months. So any questions for Jake?
Hey, well, thanks for the update, Jake. Any questions from any of the school committee members?
Yeah, I actually got a comment. Hey, how you doing, Jake? Hope all's well.
Good.
Good. Last time you were in front of us, you were talking about the arts program. I know you're into the arts, and so is my son, and there's a lot of kids that want to get back with the arts. Are you seeing any movement there?
I can't say I have, to be fair. I feel like I've heard a lot about discussions and a lot of like ideas going around, but I can't say I've seen anything really finalized.
Yeah, because I think with the sports going on, it's a good way to release stress of the arts, and get more kids involved. And yeah, just let us know how that's going as well. I don't know. Is there any update from the administration on that?
No, that's something that I don't know if Dr. Scollins, you've heard anything regarding, and I assume you're talking about programs happening outside of school, presentations, concerts, in that regard. No, I haven't, and I've actually been meaning to kind of tie in to see what we're doing with that. Obviously, everybody's being super cautious,
Right
now, but we do want to try to provide what we can for the students. So I think, why don't we table that, and Jake, that might be something we look into and update next time. I think that would be a good thing to update on. And Ellen, did you have a question?
Well, I was just going to comment that I've seen a couple of other school districts are adopting resolutions about how to get the performing arts back into, everyday life for students, and they're sending resolutions to the Department of Education, has kind of set up some of these, restrictions and spacing and things along those lines. If it, at least it's a show of support, and I can forward along a couple of the drafts that I've seen, if this committee would be interested in entertaining it, because other districts are feeling the same. I did have a question for Jake, and this year, prior to pandemic, we embarked on changing, the start times for the middle high school and going later, and reaction to it, I think, has kind of been overlooked because of what's been going on with the pandemic. But how do you feel about it? Has it impacted you positively or negatively, or scheduling, or you have kids, kind of just gotten used to it, or what's your feeling?
I mean, I will always take an extra 45 minutes of sleep. I will never deny that. But I don't really know how it would change, because I always like joke about this, but I'm like, I don't go anywhere anymore. So I don't know exactly how it would affect like after school activities, because we haven't had this in some sort of like normal year. But personally, I like it, and I've really never heard anybody else have some sort of like strong opinion on it. Either they are for or against it. I just think people have like accepted it, and it's not really like a major issue that people are worried about. I don't know if you've heard something different, but that's just from my perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
Quickly, I'm just curious. I had seen, maybe it was Dr. Sullivan had tweeted out like a poster that was up at the high school with Principal Scott asking for people to join the focus groups. And I didn't know if that was, if kids are talking about that, if there's a good response to that, if kids are excited about getting, into that, so that you can speak from, anecdotal data rather than just extrapolating based on the numbers that you've found in the survey.
Jake, this was these are the affinity groups for the inclusive cultural survey. Do you have any buzz about that from your peers?
Well, I was in one,
Oh,
but
good.
but I haven't really heard much talk about that. I feel like people kind of maybe overlooked it, or it's just kind of like a weird thing to like talk about. Oh, are you in this? Like, because
Right.
it's kind of something you would like keep more private. But I enjoyed it, and I think it will be like very worthwhile. I think we had a
Yes.
very good discussion.
I love seeing the signs. I love the idea of it, because I think that's so important at all levels. Any school district, not just Cohasset, to have those discussions and to make sure that everyone feels included. So yeah, I was really proud to tweet that, because I saw a lot of signs around the building, and it just showed to me some growth. And growth begins with the willingness to have those conversations with and to include students. So that's great. So I'm glad thank you for joining that.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, Jake. Thanks for being with us tonight and for giving us that report.
Thank you,
Much
Jake.
appreciated.
Jake, I'll let you go whenever you see fit, because I know you get studies, and you're again in a tough time with all the things going on. So thank you for all your contributions.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, Jake. Have a good night.
Bye. Have a good night.
Bye. Okay. So all right. So moving on then, if that's okay, Jim McClellan.
Please.
All right, super. So next we have a presentation from Dr. Scollins regarding our Student Opportunity Act. And I will, without further introduction, let Dr. Scollins talk about that. And Dr. Scollins, do you want me to make you a co-host?
Yes, please do. That way I can share my slides.
You got it. You are a co-host. Take it away, Dr. Scollins.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Everyone see that? The student. Okay, fabulous. So I'm sure you all know that in 2019, the state of Massachusetts passed the Student Opportunity Act. And we were supposed to work on this last year and give our plan. However, because of COVID, they pushed everything back. So our deadline was January 15th for our draft of our plan. And this is something that the school committee needs to vote on. And so I'll be asking for that vote at the end, which is what's on the agenda. So our plan goes from 2021 to 2023. And just in case you hear it's the SOA, you'll hear what's happening. So as I said, it was enacted in 2019. The reason it's in place is that they want to reduce the achievement gap. And they'd also like us to look at specific subgroups to target. And they gave us some ideas about those groups of which they'd like, you know, students with special needs, or students who are English language learners, some of those high risk groups. And so they also wanted us to look at research-based programs, and they gave us about 16 or 17 to choose from, anywhere from specific ELA programs to, so that academic lens, also hiring a more diverse staff, to looking at some inclusive practices. So there were a variety of things to choose from. When we talked about it last year, it appeared that it would be really great for us to consider our early childhood. And that was one of the things that the district has really focused on. And certainly it's important for Dr. Sullivan and I and the principals, but in particular with COVID and everything that's happening with early, you know, with our younger students, all our students, obviously we want to look at those gaps, but already concerned about the reading gap for kids. And then with COVID, what does that look like? So, so that became kind of our focus. And one of the things that they asked us to look at was our pre-K and early childhood years. That was the research-based programming they would like us to look at. So we chose that. So that was the discussion that we had, because we want to make sure that all kids succeed, and we want to make sure that we reduce all achievement gaps. We're focusing on reading in particular in this area. But, you know, we wanted to just kind of grow what we already had in place. So the Cohasset Plan, we looked at some of the data, and I want to include that Lisa Farrell was very much involved with this. Unfortunately, she can't be here tonight to be with us, and also brought Barbara Sawanka on board, because obviously with student services and because of the group that we are targeting, we decided we are going to do this for all students, but the group that we are going to target is our students with special needs. And one of the reasons, or the two of the reasons that we considered that, was we looked at students that are determined to have a specific learning disability in the upper grades. When they're, you know, pre-K through 2, you really see it around communication and some maybe developmental delays. But once they get into 3rd grade, it becomes a specific learning disability often. And we wanted to know why is that happening? You expect some, but is there a way that we can reduce that from happening in our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades and even beyond? So, so we have some data around those numbers, and we're going to track those once the plan is in place. We always do, but we're really going to focus on that. And in addition, they tend to have lower ELA MCAS scores. Their growth also, we don't get a growth rate, because you have to have at least 20 students within a subgroup for them to aggregate it for you, but we can do that. I can look at their scores with Lisa and Barbara and Alex in the upper grades and kind of look and track. We don't do MCAS in those lower grades, but we want to see if we target these kids, these students at those younger years, do we have a reduction in students with a specific learning disability? Do we then increase their scores, and more importantly, their growth in their MCAS as they move on? So that's really some of the data that we're going to look at. So we chose, like I said earlier, the research-based early literacy programs in pre-kindergarten and elementary grades. And obviously the school that's going to do that is Osgood, because they are the pre-K through 2. And we are combining this with our MTSS for because we'd already started it, and we really felt that looking at those foundational reading skills and then really having specific skills targeted in a skill-based session with students, and they started Walk to Read prior to COVID. Obviously, we're not doing it right now because no one's moving anywhere. And so we'll enact that again. And when you use the walk to read, or you've heard WIN at the 3 through 5, what I need now, it looks at students' skills and it really creates a structure so that students are given the targeted instruction they need at their skill level to increase their skill. And so that's done a couple of times a week. And then we will progress monitor, obviously, to see if our students are making the progress we want. And that gives us the data to kind of create those programs for the next round. Currently, we have Reading Street, a K through 5 program. We have Foundations, which was brought on before I got here, and that's K through 3. And that's a phonics program that specifically targets phonemic awareness in students and grows those foundational skills in phonics. We have Lexia, and Lexia was brought on last year at Osgood through a grant from the CEF. Because of the situation we're in the pandemic, we chose to continue that K through 2 and also add it to 3 through 5. And Lexia is an adaptable reading program where students go in, it's online, they kind of take a pre-assessment, so to speak. They go in and they read and answer questions. The teacher will put them in at a level that they think they're at. They'll read, it will adapt to how many answers they correct, move them up, move them down. It also allows for us to have some data around what skills those students have and what skills they don't have and what they need help for. It will also generate specific lessons that can be targeted for those skills for those students. So, so we'll continue with that and probably continue through next year and reevaluate at the end of next year whether we will keep it K through 5. Sometimes if you keep it for all those years, it loses its impact in 4th and 5th grade. So we'll look at that in a few years. And then we've also had a lot of teachers, our reading teachers and some other people do Wilson training, which is something that we will use for tiered instruction. And that ties into Foundations and also ties into students who have been diagnosed with dyslexia. But it just allows us to have a more intensive training around a student who is struggling with their reading, in particular their decoding. So the plan also asks, how are we going to monitor the success of our outcomes? So we are going to look at student achievement in ELA for 3, 4, 5, and 6 to see for those students in a subgroup of special education, are their scores increasing? And more importantly, is there growth? We want their growth between 40 and 60. And so, and they're relatively close to that when I kind of look, but there are some kids that are below that. So we want to make sure that that we are at least in that targeted area for them. And also their achievement, we want to get their scores up, right? So, and we want to move them out of not meeting expectations and move them into partially and more importantly, meeting expectations and maybe exceeding expectations. And then we also have a bunch of assessments that the reading specialist actually did. The summer I was coming on board, they had worked on this and they created a core group of assessments. They use the OWL assessment for preschool, which looks at their reading readiness. They have Dibble's 8th edition, which looks at a variety of reading skills that students have. Then they use a DRA, which is also around reading, but that's around comprehension and fluency that the teachers use. And then we're also going to look at the percentage of students identified with SLD or that specific learning disability in reading. And we're going to look for a reduction based on the programming that we have in place. Any questions so far? I feel like I'm going fast. The next part of this is that our core reading program is Reading Street. The edition we're using is expired. One of the things we were able to do for this year, because of the fact that we went into a remote world, we were able to use an edition that is a newer edition on the remote part of it, and it dovetailed okay with the program we have. But we do need to look at what our core reading is going to be. So in order to do that, we're going to convene the literacy committee. And we're going to review what we currently have pre-K through 5. In addition, there'll be some work around what's in 6th grade also, because we want that continuum to follow through. And then we are going to look at adopting a new program and what that process will be. So those are the two things that we'll be doing for the program. The other component that the SOA asks us to do is look at stakeholder engagement. Are we making sure that people know about what the plan is? Are we getting their feedback? So this plan is shared with you today and asking for you to vote on it. Barbara did bring it up to the CPAC, but we're going to make a formal presentation to them in February, as well as the school councils and the PSOs, so they can give us feedback. And then the literacy committee will also be engaging stakeholders in the process of a review of our literacy, and then also as we move through the process of the adoption. And that's all going to start to take place for the literacy committee in late spring. So our next steps are that we are required to get your approval. We will take the plans to all the groups that I just discussed. And then any amendments to our Cohasset plan are due April 1st, 2021. I spoke with Desi because I was a little concerned because it was due on the 15th and we hadn't gotten your approval yet. And she said, we know a lot of people are in that same boat. Just let us know what your plan is. And we'll be asking for all revisions and amendments by April 1st of this year. So this also really dovetails nicely into, like I said, Dr. Sullivan and I, our goals for this year are to look at achievement gaps specifically related to COVID. So this will help support that, those goals also. Any questions about the plan? Lydia.
I'm just curious, since you are looking at how, or kind of the extension into 6th grade, will you be touching base with any of the middle school groups to discuss it?
Yeah, I was actually speaking with Principal Mills. I don't know what day they all blend, but someday this past week we were discussing it and talking about who we would ask to join the literacy committee as that voice from the middle school. Yes.
Okay, great.
In particular 6th grade. I think, you know, at 6th grade, we're still making that transition and we notice that there are still students, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the budget. We still have students that are transitioning into 6th grade that still need some reading support. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask some maybe possibly uninformed questions. So because I'm not intimately acquainted, I mean, Lydia's a reading specialist. She's a great person to get input from on something like this, right? But I'm just like a regular parent of an elementary school student who doesn't really know all that much about the challenges that kids have accessing information due to difficulty reading, right? I'm lucky enough to have an older daughter so far who doesn't have any reading challenges, and my little one just hasn't started reading yet. So as an objective observer, it seems like there is the foundation of this assessment is based on students who are identified to have learning disabilities later in elementary school, right? Mm-hmm. So I have a couple of friends and acquaintances who have expressed some frustration about that process, getting diagnosed. And so I wonder if there might be, I wonder if that is a true representation of what is creating the achievement gap as it relates to reading specifically, if we are not yet, we haven't hit the sweet spot in getting access to the littler kids, if it takes a long time to get these kids the help that they need, and parents have to fight so hard. Do you see what I'm saying? I have a hard time, I just wonder what we're doing, and this may be an easy answer because this may be what Barbara is doing now. That might come later in our agenda, but I just want to know what we're doing for the younger kids. It's like it's like when we talk about achievement gaps in COVID, it's like there are real kids right now, right? Like there will be plenty of time to run an analysis on what happened and what needs to happen. But like there are real kids right now who are suffering, obviously, because we can't figure out, I'm not saying this about Cohasset Public Schools, I'm saying this about like public education in general, because it's like a crazy time that doesn't have a roadmap, right? And so there are real kids who are sort of unable to access their education. And I just wonder if the emphasis on kids who are already diagnosed might be missing some of the early kids and the challenges they're having.
So
So I see what you're saying, Ashley. And I think I'm on the same wavelength with you, but if I'm not, please say so. So I think what we're saying is we are seeing the areas of disability pop up when students are needing to read to learn.
Right.
And what we're targeting with this is we're watching that because that kind of drives some of this data for us, but we're looking at kids who are learning to read. Right. In Joseph Osgood, those really young pre-K through 2 kids, what we can put in place and then continue to track that and provide, obviously, the kids who are struggling with, you know, the full continuum of supports that they can get, whether they be through the reading specialists who are wonderful that we already have through the schools, whether it be through, you know, our child study teams and those teams that, you know, I've started jumping into, and whether it be, you know, in fact, a diagnosed disability and we need to move forward with an IEP. And, you know, we're all very much looking forward to more information on dyslexia coming out from DESE this February.
Mm-hmm. Right. So we want to target those little ones because we do want to make sure that we're attacking where they need the most support, so that when they get, just like Barbara said, to 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, those scores are those skills are all shored up. One of the things the district did was put in foundations, not last year, but the year before, but then it got interrupted, so to speak. We're trying to do foundations through a remote hybrid model. This is, you know, we're doing it. It's just different, right? Everything right now is so different. But what we want to do is hit the ground running in the fall so that we have all of these things in place. We get these targeted groups in place for kindergarten, pre-K, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade, so that we are attacking them aggressively so that kids get what they need, and we're helping them make those connections so that they can read to learn when they hit 3rd, 4th grade.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess all I'm saying is I wonder, I mean, and this is, again, I think probably in Barbara's purview, and she's, you know, she and her team are doing a wonderful job as far as I know. And I'm just wondering if it takes an official diagnosis, if there aren't some kids that we're missing.
I ask a question that might help clarify what you're asking. I'm just wondering if it's understood that like the DRA and DIBELS are given to all kids 3 times a year. So that's not just targeting a special ed population, that's every single kid is getting that 3 times a year. So we have data for all kids K through 2, right? Is that
right? It's actually pre-K because we have the OWL and we're looking at some other.
Okay, yeah.
So we look at students when they join. Thank you, Lydia, for helping with that. So we assess them in the fall, and we use that data to look at students and what they need. We progress monitor them so that we're constantly evaluating what they need next. And then in the middle of the year, we evaluate again. And then the end of the year, we use those assessments. And then we start it again the following year. So we continue to look at that data so we can track a student. We have a student who starts with us in pre-K and they go with us all the way through. We can track all that data all along to make sure that we're shoring them up. And I don't know how it was before I got here around, and I don't necessarily know. What was it like? There used to be a wait and see. And this is not just here, I'm just saying in general, there's kind of this wait and see. Maybe they're just developmentally not ready yet. And then all of a sudden there was like 3rd grade,
right?
Yeah. 2nd grade, 3rd grade. Holy cow, this kid isn't reading. Get him tested. Like, let's find out what's wrong. We're trying to be proactive and are being proactive because these things are already in place and they have been using them. But they have a battery of assessments so that we can make sure that we find these kids sooner. Because all research says, grab these kids sooner, okay? One, you'll have a better chance of making sure they're a successful reader.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. And again, I'm not saying I talked to a representative sample of parents, but I have had conversations with parents who've expressed that that is what they encountered in the past. And so it makes me feel optimistic that that's changing course. So thank you.
Any other questions? So if any other amendments are made, obviously I'm going to bring this to you, and I will bring this to you before we finalize everything with the state. And that would be probably, let's see, so what I say, April 1st. So in March, we'll bring it forward so you know everything that's there.
So Dr. Scullin, so we need a vote for this, correct?
Right,
From the committee to accept it. I should add that this very much ties into the goals that were set by the school committee regarding learning gaps and you know, the potential learning gaps for our students. So, you know, I love this focus. I should say there were a couple of different directions we could have focused with things happening in the district, but I thought that, you know, this particular focus I really admire, and, you know, I admire the staff for the work they do to help the kids every day. So it's good to look at the data to support them in their efforts. So I guess Chair McClellan, with that, if there's no further questions, would bring it to you to determine if we have approval for this.
Okay, everyone, is there a motion on the floor as to approve the Student Opportunity Act presentation that Dr. Scollins, our Assistant Superintendent, just presented? Is there a motion to that effect on the floor?
So moved.
I'll
Lydia.
second.
Motion made by Mrs. St. Ange, seconded by Mr. Kearney. All in favor indicate so in roll call. Mrs. Caleri,
Aye.
Mr. Kearney,
Aye.
Mrs. Marr,
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan, Dr. Scollins, thank you for the presentation of that plan. That motion unanimously passes and is approved.
Thank you so much. Thank you from Barbara and Lisa. We're very happy about it. We'll keep you updated too. It will be part of our agendas, probably a couple of, a few times a year. We'll update you on all the things that are happening with it. I'm sure that will be helpful. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Scollins. A lot of work there. Thank you so much, and important work. So Dr. Sullivan, maybe on to this much needed glimmer of hope that I alluded to earlier. Not an
Yes.
announcement.
Well, it's not an announcement, but it's discussions, right? So, but I also want to thank Dr. Scollins, Barbara, Principal Farrell, and really the staff at the elementary schools for that. And I think it's a great plan. As we've all from the beginning, as we've prioritized in-person learning and understood the need to make sure we keep people safe in trying to push for that. And I've really appreciated the discussions with the school committee. Like any other school district around us, we're looking at what is appropriate for our district in terms of in-person learning. And well, I get a lot of noise, some feedback there. And what I'm looking at now is just the ability for me to move forward with some discussions regarding bringing more students back at the elementary level. A couple of factors that we should consider here is that right now we're at 6 feet in our elementary buildings, primarily 6 feet, and we are certainly at 6 feet during our dining situations. At our middle and high school, we are within 6 feet in basically every scenario except for our dining scenarios. Many of them are at 3 feet already. So we really aren't in a situation where we can increase the amount of students we're bringing in our middle and high school, given the requirements that are set for us. I just want to put that out there right away. We've also always prioritized the need for our youngest students to get that in-person learning, even perhaps more paramount than our our middle and high school students because of their development and the learning models. And we also recognize the strain that is put on our staff to try at the elementary level to produce two different models of learning for our youngest learners, and the strain it puts on families. So what we're looking to do, and I've mentioned this to our Cohasset Teachers Association President, Bob Erlinson, and told them that, you know, I'd be just at least mentioning it today, and hopefully discussing this at the will of the committee further, and getting some information from families, which I'll get into in a minute, is to try to get our students pre-K to 5 back in a full-time scenario. Right now, we'll be looking, you know, Monday through Friday, full days. That's, you know, again, we have to, all of this is contingent upon our bargaining with the Cohasset Teachers Association, but getting them into to the school full-time in the classrooms at a 3-foot distance, and it would be a 3-foot distance. Perhaps at Osgood, there might be scenarios where it would be a little more, and in classrooms, and keeping the 6-foot distance that we're required to keep during our dining experiences. And the idea would be to move, we believe we could create a plan. I could present something more formal to you on our next school committee meeting, which is February 3rd, perhaps for a vote at that point, contingent upon where we are with our Cohasset Teachers Association, to bring all students back at those restrictions, starting Monday, March 1st. That would be the thought. I believe we could create a thoughtful and well articulated plan that we could make sure that we don't rush, and we can put into place by March 1st. And what I'd also like permission to do is to send out a couple of questions to the school community. Some really essential questions. The first one is, do you want to do this? And the first question would be, would you send your children back to school? And this again is for our elementary communities, the Osgood and Deer Hill. Would you send your children back to school in person on March 1st, 2021, if distancing between students was reduced to 3 feet within the classroom and maintained at 6 feet when eating lunch? That's the first question. To find out where we are as a family community, you know, where the families are in our community regarding that proposal. The second question I'd like to send, because we do have very limited transportation in Cohasset in terms of our buses, and the bus restrictions are going to remain in place, it appears, until the spring anyway, when there's a better disposition on you know, what would be permissible for seating on buses. So we'd essentially have to keep our same busing format, which is busing our students outside of 2 miles to Osgood and Deer Hill, but we'd have to do it in the same way we're doing it right now, which means that our students who are currently being bused for cohort A on Mondays and Tuesdays and sometimes Wednesdays would have to find transportation to school on Thursdays and Fridays and sometimes Wednesdays. And it would be the flip with our B cohort. Just kind of the facts of where we are right now with our limited transportation and the restrictions that are put upon us. So the second question that I'd like to ask in survey form to the families of the Cohasset Elementary School is that in order to successfully get our elementary students PK to 5 back in person on March 1st, we would need to keep our current transportation routes and bus occupancy. Given that state distancing requirements for buses have not changed, are you willing to maintain the current hybrid busing schedule, requiring parents and guardians to drive their students on the days that they would have otherwise been remote, beginning on March 1st, 2021? So I really need to get information on those 2 areas before we can move forward in any way. And I'd like permission to do that, and also permission to bring some conversations and continue them with the Cohasset Teachers Association, plan more with my leadership team, and then present something more formalized to you on February 3rd. So I guess if you want, we want to discuss it at all, I'm open for that, but I really do need just some guidance on which way to move in that regard.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. It's very exciting news of a potential shift in the learning model here in Cohasset. I guess we'll just go around. Why don't we start with the end of the alphabet this time with Mrs. St. Ange. Do you have any comments or discussion?
Yes, I think it's a very exciting prospect. And I just have to bring in my point of view as a teacher, you know, just making sure that I agree that we should try to get the kids back into school. I just want to make sure that we're doing it in the absolute safest way possible. And I just want to keep our eye, I guess, on the vaccination schedule. And it's something that I've brought up before. I guess I just want to make sure everyone has the best chance of staying healthy and also having a positive education experience. So just kind of keeping that out there. But I think that if we can make a plan that gets our kids back and learning in person, I think we could have a huge advantage. I know that my kids are so much happier and more enthusiastic on in-person learning days. It really has such a different feeling at our house, and being with their teachers, I think, is very nice for them after being together as a family so much. So having that different voice guiding the way through their curriculum is hugely advantageous. I just see such a difference with their in-person time.
Yeah, I should say, Lydia, the vaccination period is for staff is set from February, and the end of the window is April. And really, we're doing everything we can to push that forward towards February. And it's really my hope that all of that will happen for our staff before the end of February. So that's really an important factor.
Thank you, Mrs. St. Ange. Sort of moving backwards here, Mrs. Marr, do you have any comments?
I concur with Lydia. I think getting kids back into school, you know, is important, and especially at this level where remote, you know, the discipline of remote learning for the younger kids could be a challenge. And I, you know, admire the district's attempt to do this and come up with a sound plan, you know, to execute this. So I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Mrs. Marr. Mr. Kearney, any thoughts on this? Just preliminary thoughts on this preliminary discussion?
Yes, first of all, the word grateful comes to mind, and Dr. Scollins and Dr. Sullivan, I just want to tell you, as a parent and as a school committee, how much in your administration and your team, and how grateful that we are of you guys. Actually, you know, I know it's not easy to come up with a plan, you know, and you know, this is, I know it's a proactive way, it's a proactive approach. It's just that I just want people to understand how much of the work goes into this to just come up with a plan. And, you know, I know the teachers are doing what they can, and they're working as hard as they can as well. And it's hard to come up with, you know, a plan, and you guys, you're being proactive, and I just want you to know that we support you. And I know it's not going to be easy. And I love the idea of asking the questions, because then we can put a plan together. But I just also, I think the community knows that our whole way is thinking is to try to get these kids into in-person learning, because that's where they learn the best. And I wanted to just tell you how grateful we are.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. Ms. Claire, before we move on to you, I just noticed there was a comment from the audience that I just wanted to read. I just noticed it came in a few minutes ago. This is Mrs. Masari, who is one of our elementary school teachers here in Cohasset. She says that she would like to express concern about the soundness of this decision based on the safety of the students, their families, as well as the educators. As an elementary school teacher in Cohasset, she would like to emphasize the intense effort it takes to keep 10 students socially distanced and learning safely. And she was wondering how we are prioritizing the vaccination of educators.
Well, I would certainly, I wouldn't argue that we have to work very hard at keeping our students social distance. And that's not going to change. There has not been any transmission in our schools, and our protocols, I feel they're very successful. But it's really important to get our students back as well. And as I mentioned, the vaccination is a definite priority. I do anything I can to get that to happen as soon as we can here in Cohasset. And I'm hopeful that will be happening in February. That's the hope. So certainly I'm pushing with everything I have to get that happening in February. And I believe we can continue our successful protocols with having more kids in. And I believe that what we gain from it is what's best for our kids. It's best for our kids to be with teachers learning in person, and I believe we can do that safely. I believe
Thank
it's
you.
proven we have.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Margaret Holland, who lives in Cohasset, did not state her address, states that as a resident of Cohasset and a teacher with 15 years experience in Cohasset, she has to ask, how on earth can you even begin to discuss bringing elementary students back full-time without knowing the timeline for vaccinating your staff? I couldn't agree more with Mrs. Massari. So I think, Dr. Sullivan, you sort of just addressed that. And really, I would just like to emphasize, and I know, Mrs. Cleary, it's your turn to speak. I just want to say, I want to emphasize that this is a preliminary discussion about this, where it's sort of exploratory work on whether we can get our youngest students who have the most difficulty with remote learning back to school on a regular basis in the future. So it's very important not to base our future decisions on our current situation, and we're not implementing this tomorrow. So this is the very beginning of a longer discussion and something that is going to be deliberated on, and the product of if it's even implemented, the product of a very purposeful plan drafted by our district leadership. So what we're doing here is just sort of announcing intentions to look into this, because it is absolutely needed, because my position is, how on earth can we not discuss this as a school district? How on earth can we not discuss getting our kids back into school as much as possible? So that's my position on that. So I just want everyone to know, though, that it's not happening tomorrow. We're going to continue to discuss it. This is just the initial discussion. So this is just the announcement that we're looking into this. So everyone's on the same page, teachers and families included. So with that, Mrs. Cleary.
So I would just like to say that I'm sort of like the resident risk averse sort of scaredy cat on the committee, it seems. But I do have to say that I understand that I am not, that everyone is entitled to their own perspective, and everyone is entitled to prioritize their own needs. And while this may make me nervous, I completely understand our responsibility to look at how we can do this safely so that our kids can be educated. That's our responsibility. And so it is for that reason that I support the leadership team's continued progress on this front.
Yeah, and I just want to say I respect what Mika and Margaret are saying. I don't want to sound like I'm disrespecting the point of view. I just feel that we do want to try to always do what's best for our kids, and I need to push forward and explore possibilities to provide what's best for our students. So I'm going to respectfully do that, gather voice, and talk with the association. And try to determine what is indeed the safest and best option. So yeah, as Craig said, this isn't tomorrow. This is with some thought, but we do have to plan if we're going to do anything. And that's what I'm announcing right now, is that I'd like to plan. So if there's any announcement, that's what it is. we're starting to plan, but I appreciate the passion and I respect the point of view. No doubt about that.
Thank you. Thank you all. And I just like to note, I mean, obviously, and just quickly, I'm completely in support of it so long as we can roll it out in a safe fashion. And I'm absolutely 100% confident that Dr. Scollins and Dr. Sullivan, as they explore this, will identify whether we can safely do that. And we will discuss continuously whether we can safely do that. I'm certainly not dismissive of contrary perspectives. What I am dismissive of are sort of tones that insinuate that any other position than the ones held by a particular individual are just preposterous. And that's not what we're here to do. We're here to explore all different aspects and avenues and arrive hopefully at the best learning solution for the children in our district. Mrs. St. Ange.
Just want to add that, I think that something that our leadership team has done so well is, Dr. Sullivan, I feel like your communication about cases that have come up in our district have been very clearly communicated. And I know that would continue, in going back to a full, to have our kids at school, we're continuing to work with, the Department of Public Health and monitoring cases, and also flexible in, if something changes, then we take that into consideration. And I know we don't even have a plan yet, but I just think it's important for people to think about the fact that everything that's happening right now, all safety measures continue to happen. We keep looking at numbers. If things have to shift, they can still shift. We live in this world of constant change and flexibility right now, and we still would be keeping that in mind. It would just be our day-to-day school model that would be possibly looking different. So I just think it's important to kind of think big picture about, some things would be changing. Our pre-K through 5 kids might possibly at some point all be back in school every day, but we will not stop looking at COVID cases and numbers and the repercussions of our actions. And so I just think it's important to have that a part of the conversation as well.
Yeah, and
Really
I think we've also shown that we will reverse and move to something different if there's a situation where, there's a need to do so. I mean, no one's putting on blinders, but getting kids back in person is really important. It's really important to reduce any regression in learning. It's really important from a social emotional standpoint. It's important for the kids. It's important for the families. I think it's important for the staff if we can do that. So that's all of that is just it's just important, and we need to look at it and try to problem solve this. So this is just another step in a seemingly never-ending puzzle that we're putting together, and we're keeping our eyes open.
And Dr. Sullivan, as you mentioned earlier, it's important to point out that none of this happens without fulfilling any sort of bargaining obligations with our Teachers Association. And they are always and always have been and will remain an important voice in any sort of decision that impacts the school district. So, while I, appreciate, any sort of, perspectives that they may bring, they will absolutely be taken into consideration in any sort of final decision. So, and this is far from final right now. We're simply discussing.
Yes, this is the preliminary discussions.
As I was speaking, a member of the community chimed in with a question, a good question. This is C. Muir, I believe it's Cassie Muir from past meetings. I'm remembering the name right, and her address is 40 Redgate Lane. She asks, has our district opted into the state's pool testing? Dr. Sullivan, could you please give her some information on this? I know that you've been dealing with this.
Yes, we sent a letter of interest to the state regarding that. For those of you who don't know what pool testing is, it's a program being offered by the state, which is to test students and staff, just as it sounds, in a pool or a group of tests. It really is not for specific groups. It's designed, and it needs to be about 85% of the population at least, and it needs to be done regularly, I believe at least twice a week, where you'd be testing students and staff in pools of 10 to 25. And it's the if anybody's had the tester, you get the kind of the long test. It feels like it goes sort of in the back of your brain. Not that test. It's the front nasal swab And then what they do is they take the tests in a pool and we have to transport them. So we would have to do all that, transport the tests in that grouping to a lab, and then they'd send us back secure information through software that we'd have to install and have to keep secure. And it would identify if there was a positive test in the pool. Then what we'd have to do is using the BNAX, which I always thought was Binax, but it's not, it's BNAX now, testing. We would have to do a reflexive test that would determine which tests in the pool that we had a positive showing were positive, and potentially send those folks out to get further PCR testing if necessary. It's a wonderful idea and it's great, and its philosophy could not be more behind that. It is somewhat problematic for a small district to put all of that into place from an operational standpoint. Never mind a financial one. You know, we're hopefully getting some of the ESSER funding that might help pay for this, but there's only 6 weeks that would be provided for us. Then we'd have to pick it up. I think it's $5 a swab, and then all the transportation and all that. It really, I've talked about it extensively with my head nurse, and Dr. Scollins also did it. And I've also talked about it with Bob Rillinson, the head of the CTA. It's just operationally very difficult. It's very difficult for a small district when we are, you know, we have 5 nurses in the district, 2 of them are half-time nurses. We have a health department that is taxed out in our town, just like everyone else is, to think about how we're going to go about doing that. I'm not saying no to it. We have applied for it. We'd like to do it, but I also want to be pragmatic with the thoughts regarding that. It's a lot for a very small district. So that's where we are right now. But to answer your question, Ms. Muir, yes, we have applied for it, and yes, there is an interest.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Any other comments or points from the members of the school committee? Okay, seeing none, I would like to take a vote just to sort of provide the leadership with the consensus from the school committee in terms of their rolling out the preliminary plans here. I'd like to seek a motion to approve leadership's exploratory efforts in determining whether return to full-time elementary schooling in person is possible, and to the development of a plan for the school committee's consideration at this time. Is there a motion to that effect on the floor?
So, oh, I'm sorry. I'll second it.
Motion made by, who made the motion?
Mrs. Cleary.
Mrs. Cleary, seconded by Mr. Kearney. All in favor indicate so in roll call. Mrs. Cleary?
Aye.
Mr. Kearney?
Aye.
Mrs. Marr?
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange?
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan. So that motion unanimously passes. And Dr. Sullivan, it seems that the school committee would agree with your and leadership's assessment that this may be a worthwhile endeavor to investigate. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
There are 2 more comments just popped up basically as we were taking the vote, so it was really impossible for me to read them while we're doing that. But I just do want to read them publicly because people have taken the time to watch the meeting and comment. Username identified with the name O'Keefe states there are many towns such as Westwood, Wellesley, etc. have successfully been able to send the youngest learners back to in-person learning this entire year. Are we able to tap into their learnings?
Yeah, I mean, all I'd say is that every district's different and the conditions are different in their particular community. You know, clearly transportation was an issue for us early on. I know that Wellesley, I believe, has had their own testing program going for quite some time at an exorbitant expense. I can't speak to Westwood, but yeah, we're looking at, and we're talking to districts all around us to try to figure out what the best way to do it is, and just know that everything is very unique to the district that you're in, and that's something that I've always been very aware of. And even the way that we're looking at this, there are some conditions that need to be met that are not necessarily an obstacle in other districts. So Yeah, we're doing our best, but we are absolutely tapping into those other districts to try to learn from them.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Lastly, Megan Worski of 11 Sankey Road writes, I want to thank the teachers for their efforts this year in both educating our children while also keeping them safe. Last week, 6th grade was remote due to lack of coverage, and students needed to quarantine/test this past weekend due to spacing being less than 6 feet. I want my children back in school, more like many parents. However, the elementary schools are not capable of quickly teaching remotely if there is a spread with all students back. So, well, thank you very much for the comment. Again, this is a sort of, it sounds like the leadership will be sending out a survey. If you're obviously, you answer accordingly to your perspectives. And if people are not in support of it, this is very much a community effort. And that survey will help, I think, Dr. Scollins and Dr. Sullivan and their team in determining how feasible this all is. So there's a follow-up from Ms. Worski at 11 Sankey Road. There needs to be more technology given to K-5 teachers. Teachers should have 2 devices, microphones and cameras for computers. Without the technology, if a K-5 class needs to quarantine, there will be major loss of learning. Okay, thank you for the comment, Mrs. Worski. Unless anyone has any other discussion, I think we've sort of voted to sort of move forward preliminarily with this and we can move on. Dr. Sullivan, you comfortable moving on, or is that complete?
Yeah, no, I just tell Ms. Sawerski that those are things that we look into, and certainly working with our leadership team. We have a director of technology newly appointed in our district that is trying to help outfit that, working with, the team we've always had in Cohasset. And then we have a really dynamic technology leader in Cassie O'Brien that works with teachers individually. So, we're well suited to make sure that they have what they need to teach. And if they don't, then, certainly that we're listening for that voice and trying to attend to it. So I appreciate that. And I always appreciate when folks are looking out to try to give our teachers the tools they need to make sure that they're successful from a learning perspective. So thank you for the comment.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Sullivan, does that complete your report?
I think, Dr. Scollins, was there other items? I think that's it. And we'll be back again when we talk about budget, but for now, that is it. And thank you all for, your thoughtful comments on this. All of this is difficult and we're, really trying to do the right thing. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Moving on, the next agenda item is our special education update. We turn to our Director of Student Services, Mrs. Barbara Saronka.
Thank you, everybody. It's nice to be here. I actually have a little bit of an update with Dr. Scollins later on. So my own individual update here is going to allude to some of that and perhaps also be a little bit short because I have more to say later. But I just wanted to let everyone know, last time I believe I alluded to 2 grants that we had applied for, and one had come in for our pre-K. Our other grant came in as well, which is going to enable us to move forward with a lot of our work around looking at programming, evaluating some of our programming, moving forward with perhaps, an eye to expansion of programming. And so we're very excited about that. As I mentioned earlier, I have been joining as the director, not just of special education, but of student services into our child study teams at the secondary level, our ISST teams, and very excited to work with the principals on that and to also join in with the principals on some staff observations and things like that, which is really nice to see our staff in action and really give them some feedback, especially around their special education through a special education lens and things like that. So all of that stuff is very exciting, and it's great to really work in such close partnership with the principals. Michael Stapleton, our secondary team chair, is joining us as a panelist. He and I have a little bit of a presentation later on when Dr. Scollins has something to share. And we will be talking a little bit about our expansion of co-teaching, and also, some of the work that we are very much partnering with the principals around in terms of our students' social emotional learning, mental health issues, especially, during and after this pandemic, and when we are, looking at kind of school the way we are used to and what we are going to need to be ready for that, and some forward thinking that we have around that, which we will kind of expand upon a little bit later on.
Thank you, Barbara. Any questions for Barbara and Michael? Welcome to our happy panel here. Or
yeah,
Michael, well, yeah, Michael, and I just want to, well, Michael's here. He does a fabulous job as a great voice and leader in our middle and high school, and it's nice to have him here. He's very much works closely with Barbara and all the teachers, but great to have on our leadership team. So, any questions for Michael or Barbara?
Say none. Mrs. Marr? Mr. Kearney?
I'd like to say thank you. Keep up the good work, and nice to meet you, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Mrs. Caleri? Okay, thank you so much for your important work, guys, and your contribution. Thank you.
So we'll hear from Michael and Barbara as we get into the budget presentation.
Yes.
Would you like me to move to that portion, Chair McClellan?
Yes, we'll move on to the finance, and I think it begins with our monthly budget update from our Director of Finance and Operations, Mrs. Owen.
Susan, would you like me to share that on my screen?
Can you share the screen with me?
You want to be able to share your screen?
I want to, yeah, I want to share my screen.
You got it.
Sorry.
I knew what you meant. Well, 100% sure, but I had the feeling I know what you meant. You have the power, just so you know.
Okay, I'm headed there. I just figured it'd be easier where we have a whole list of things. Good evening, everyone. Happy to be back. We're just going to go over briefly. This is the school budget summary for the month of December, or from July through December. You can see, the typical areas of some concern are special education tuitions, which is not a surprise. Part of that is because we have all of them encumbered for the rest of the year. Another, there's been moving targets going on. We've had one or two settlements come through that we've had to make payments on, and utilities as well. We're at 73%, not too bad. We're 50% through the year, so you can kind of see where we are with all the summaries. I'll move on to the next piece. This is just the summary budget to actual. I mean, it's basically the same information, just in different forms. And then we have the revolving and grant summary, which you can kind of follow. The two school reopening grants, or the COVID grants, are pretty close to being expended. The school reopening grant is down to 12,000. That should be probably coming through on our next warrant and being expended right down to zero. The CARES grant, we have some PD that's, I believe, on the current warrant that's going to expend that. And then you can see some of the other grants as you go down the line and what their balances are looking like. The Credit for Life grant, that happened last year. And we're working on getting the expenditures tied to the correct account number. It initially came out of the student activity account, out of the school budget. So we've got to transfer those expenditures over to the Credit for Life grant, because that actually has already happened. And then we get into the revolving funds. As you can see, the after school is in a slight deficit. I'm sure they're still collecting tuitions as we go. And I know kindergarten was a question on what that was looking like. So this kindergarten and what the balance is looking like right now. Transportation, we're watching carefully because we didn't have any pay to rides this year. So we have to make sure we don't deplete that account. So definitely a lot of things moving. School lunch is picking up, which is good. The more kids are in school, the more lunches that we serve. So it's good coming from that standpoint. This is the capital outlay and what happens to be remaining currently for this year. I know there's a small amount for Chromebooks. There was, sorry, let me say, they're working on, I just spoke to facilities today. The middle school and high school projector is in and completed, so that should be working. So that money should be going away. And the split AC and band rooms, they not at the top of the list, but they are looking into it and starting to think of what to do and how to do it in the spring. Courtyard doors has been not moving really fast. I mean, I spoke to facilities today and they're still waiting for vendors to come in with quotes. And they said, for whatever reason, the vendors are not real quick about bringing those quotes in. So that's kind of the holdup on what the repair of the courtyard doors are. So that would be capital. I don't know if there's any questions on any of that we just went through. I know it was quick, but we have a lot of budget stuff to talk about today.
So, and I just like to sort of emphasize that courtyard door project is taking an absurd amount of time, and I think that maybe vendors hasten the time it takes to get their proposals together if they're maybe badgered a little bit more, for lack of a better phrase. I mean, so we can always reach out to people. We don't necessarily have to just sit on our hands and wait for them to come to us. I mean, that is a 15-year in coming project where water's been leaking into our Deer Hill School through those courtyard doors, and I just can't believe that we're still dealing with it. So, maybe some more proactive efforts can be made there to get the proposals. They started. Anyway,
No.
sorry.
Completely understand. Like I said, I talked to Nick and it's kind of been in Nick and Mark's hands. I can definitely reach out and find out who the vendors are and make the calls myself, give them a little push and see if we can get something or find different vendors.
That would be awesome.
So that's what I'll do.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's my only question. Anyone else? Can't see everyone at the same time, so just speak up if you have a question. I don't see any. Okay, I don't think there are any.
Okay, I'm gonna go on to the next. Let's see. So the next is the FY22 budget update and line item budget. We've been working really hard with department heads, Dr. Scollins, Dr. Sullivan. We've all met with the admin team. We've been very, trying to think what the word is, very sincere about what our requests are, and have not gone overboard with what we're looking for. So just to begin, this is going to be kind of a 3-part. These are the budget priorities that we talked about and we agreed upon for the FY22 budget, similar to last year, except for the last one, which is addressing the learning gaps. Here is the requested school budget. We look at the FY21 appropriated budget. Then we have the contractual salary obligations. Then we have a decrease in circuit breaker, one, because the reimbursement rate went down. And two,
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? Are you trying to share your screen?
It's not shared.
oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. It's so hard. You have to unshare and then go back.
No.
Come and share your screen again. New budget. Sorry to interrupt.
Let's see. No, that's okay.
And
I thought it was shared.
You know who your true friends are now, Sue, right?
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Scollins.
So here are the budget priorities that I spoke about. We were on this slide. So this basically goes through what the current budget is, what the contractual obligations are, and the percentage. Decrease in circuit breaker. We had less tuition. We also had a decrease in the reimbursement rate. So there's 125,000 that we needed to make up. We had a decrease in special ed tuition, which was nice. We have projected retirement savings. And I labeled that as tier one, for lack of a better word, that we need about $683,000 to roll our year, which is a total of 3.26%. Then if you go into the next round, we have some requests that came through, and we'll talk more about it in detail through Leslie and Barbara, but we have a 0.5 increase to a high school social studies teacher being requested, a 0.5 increase for the middle school reading specialist, a 1.0 computer science / technology specialist for the middle and high, a grade 7 special education teacher. There's 50,000 put in there to begin the process of reducing our full day K tuition. And then we went back to the drawing table because there was over $100,000 and a request for increased supplies and materials. We shaved that down to about 50,000, which was another 1.3%. So the total, if we were to go for and ask for everything, is a 4.69% increase, which truly isn't that bad when that's everything we're looking for at this point. Unfortunately, they're talking 2 to 3% right now coming from the town. So we may have to go back to the drawing board and skim a little bit more and be more creative. Let's see, what else? And our revolving funds also play a part in this because we do offset our budget based on our revenue from our revolving funds. However, due to the decrease in transportation, there's no pay to rides this year. So we're not going to be bringing in any tuition for transportation. So that revolving account is going to have to subsidize the school budget account and probably deplete down to just about nothing. Same with athletic revolving. I mean, we have had some sports, not all and not a lot. So we're going to probably bring in less revenue in the sports. And also with the facilities rental, we have no rentals going on in the buildings right now. So I know we usually use that account to offset some of our budget items. There won't be any new revenue coming into that department.
Mrs. Owen?
Yes.
May I just interrupt you there? Because I think I'm getting a question, and I think it might be easier as you go along because there's so much information to address them as we go.
Okay.
If there are any questions related to the requested increase, Barbara Steffen asks, she did not include her address, and I do not know it, and she knows better than to not include her address. But she asks, when you say increase in 0.5 reading specialist at the middle school, can you clarify, is there currently a reading specialist at the middle school? Because she does not believe there is.
There is not. We do not have a reading specialist at the middle school. It's a real problem for us. It's something that we've had on there, and I would say it's at the top of our list, really. I know that Dr. Collins will get into that a little more, but we do not have one currently.
Okay. And she just followed up saying, can you note that, please? You're going to need one.
Thank you.
She also mentioned that her address is 260 Jerusalem Road. Thank you very much.
So the remainder of the slides here will more for, just reading and informational. Each of the principals submitted a couple slides to kind of explain their views and their positions they were asking for. But Dr. Scollins and Dr. Scollins and Ms. Sawamka are going to get into more detail, and Michael Stapleton as well. So I'm going to stop at that point and turn it over to Leslie.
Do I have the rights, Dr. Sullivan, to share my?
You do have the rights. You have the
Love
right.
that.
If you can't share, I can share your presentation if you get
That's
stuck.
what was- Yeah, I think I'm good. There it is. All right.
I want to present. There you go. Hit present.
I can do that. How's that? Good?
There you go. I like it.
So these are the additional positions that we are looking for the budget for FY 2020. I'll just list them off and then Barbara, Michael, and I will kind of talk them through. So at the middle school, we are looking for a reading specialist, a 0.5. We do not currently have one, and I know that Dr. Sullivan already said this, but we do not. And yes, we do believe strongly that we need it. So I do agree with Mrs. Stefan. We also are looking at a special education teacher. That's a 1.0 position. At the high school, we're looking at a social studies teacher, which is a full-time position. And then at the middle and the high school, we are looking at a shared position for computer science teacher, instructional technology specialist, and that is a 1.0 for that position. So I'll go through and we'll explain why we need the positions that we need and the justification for it. So the 0.5 reading specialist at the middle school is something that has been on our list. And in order to continue and grow our multi-tiered system of support, we absolutely need a reading specialist to support our students in the area of reading. It will also provide a continuum of reading support from our students that are receiving those supports at the Deer Hill School. Our reading specialist, Sarah McDonald, has been amazing and very helpful to the middle school last year and continues to do that this year around giving information, working with Principal Mills and Assistant Principal Salas to target students and find ways to support those that were getting supports when they were at the elementary level. And adding that reading specialist at the same time will also add a screening assessment as those students come in. And that will be also a continuum from the elementary school. Because we do find that we do have students that are entering middle school, entering 6th grade, that still need support, not necessarily with decoding and some of those basic skills, but in comprehension. That's still an issue, and they are now reading to learn, and so they still need some support on how do they break that down in order to be able to comprehend better. So that is that first position. Do you have any questions around the reading specialist? All set? All right, I'll move on.
And if, committee members, if you do have a question, and when we're sharing screens, I can't see everyone. So if you have a question, just ask it. I can't see everyone, so I won't be able to call on you.
Okay, Dr. Scollins, it's Ellen.
It's fine.
So you have 0.5. Are you being frugal? Is the need a 1.0 or is the need a 0.5?
That's a great question. I think we believe we could do it with a 0.5 for right now. I guess I would wonder about maybe in the future, what does that look like? But I do think, they vetted it and believe that they could do that with the 0.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of the reading specialist, I think the 0.5 would do a lot of push in the classrooms, working almost in a co-teaching format with some of the ELA teachers or the ELA teachers in each grade level.
Exactly. And also, and this is just some data that Principal Mills had put together, but also looking at social studies. That's another area where Principal Mills and I discussed the fact that so much reading happens in social studies. And so that's also another place where they can push in and really help with that content. So working in conjunction with the ELA and the social studies teachers, actually all content areas, but really pushing in. There will be some pullout for some of that individual or small group instructed reading that's necessary, but really being able to break up the reading material so that kids can access it, and working with teachers and are allowing them some supports around how do you break up the material, how do you give content reading at a student's reading level. So that's a great question. And so on this, this is some of the data that Principal Mills and Principal Salas will use as they're looking at students. And you can see all students, there was a dip. If you look at 6th grade, there's a bit of a dip in 7th grade, and then it starts to go back up. If you're looking at students that needing reading support that came to us in grade 5, you can see that they're at a lower level. They are, that dip and then they increase. So those are some of the things that we want to make sure. Those students that were shown to be getting reading support in grade 5. As you can see, they are below in their reading scores. So obviously, we want to shore them up so that they're more successful. And you can see again, this is their growth. But look at, so once we kind of get them, there's a little bit of a dip and then back up. So those are some things that we want to really watch. If you look at our reading specialists, our students that come in at that red line, as you can see for them, we really need to grab them here and shore them up because the content gets more difficult. And the next I'll turn over to Barbara and Michael. They'll talk about the secondary special education teacher.
So the position that we're looking to add, it's really for the rising 7th graders. It's the current 7th grade class. So they will be the rising students. It's a secondary special education teacher position that we're looking to add. And the reason I'm labeling it that way, I guess, is because we're hoping that it will be a flexible, possibly a looping position to kind of planfully continue the expansion of this co-teaching inclusion model. This is a group of students who may continue to be a big cohort, and we may need to look planfully at the way we post for this if we need that teacher to continue with them. But what we're really seeing is seeing a need to add that additional section to the ELA, the math, and the support center for this class. And this particular group actually is the group that we initially started back before I was here with this co-teaching model. And we can see as they are moving up, we are expanding that model with students in that group. As the following class is moving up as well, there is an expansion of students in that co-teaching model. It is continuing to grow. And I know Dr. Scollins, we're right in the middle of this screen sharing that you're doing with a presentation, but Michael Stapleton and I also have some slides. If we had the ability to share those, that would be wonderful. And I could share my screen with that.
I am making you both the co-host.
Michael, do you want to grab it then?
It's all
So
right.
many co-hosts.
Go ahead.
Now it's out of control, but we can do it.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just teasing it. It's me. But
Yeah. I just want to start by saying too, this is an exciting opportunity to be here today and to speak to the co-teaching initiative that we've adopted at Cohasset Public Schools. When I first started as one of the co-teachers, we had one section of ELA and math per grade level, and we built that up from 6, 7, and 8, as well as at the high school level. So our grades 9 and 10 ELA have been co-taught, as well as our Algebra 1 and our Algebra 2. And so I think as an inclusive practice, which the district is committed to, adopting and building, I think that this is an exciting position as we've seen the numbers grow and as this is really, turned into the service delivery model for a number of our students, at the middle and the high school level.
So, as Michael was saying, currently grades 6, 7, and 8 have co-teaching for ELA and math. Grade 9 and 10 have a year-long ELA. Algebra 1 and 2 are semester-long and they are co-taught. And the co-teaching PD is offered using Seaside Consulting, and we are continuing to do that. I'm in communication with them. So periodically throughout the year, obviously this year with COVID, it's not the on-site observations, but I'm working closely with them to see how we can continue that even in this model and in the future. So the current grade 7, Michael, do you want to speak to this a little bit?
Yeah, so I think that, the current grade 7 is a larger class size at the middle school level compared to, the grade 6 and the grade 8. And so we have seen, like I mentioned, the increase in number of total sections based on students that are in IEPs who have, the grid B, or not to get too jargony with the special education language, but that co-taught service. And so, as we've grown this, we needed to add a second section of both ELA and math at the 7th grade level to make sure that we meet the requirement that, no more than 50% of students in a co-taught class are on IEPs. And I think it really does make for a nice grouping of students of all ability levels, so students that are receiving these special education services through this model, have, peers that are, maybe at different ability levels, but it really does help the class function in a nice manner. And so, as we've built this and we're looking forward, the high school scheduling does not allow for, multiple sections just based on like 5 periods compared to 7 periods. So I think, this position that we're planning for would really be to build this and so that we're able to create classes that are inclusive of all ability levels, and still able to, adequately provide the special education services that have been identified through student IEPs.
So we have been able to really kind of creatively support this year because we have had some of this need this year. But what we are seeing coming up is that the teacher who has been able to support us in this is going to have a full cohort of students that she will need to teach in her original role. And that is why we need to kind of expand this into another teacher. And here's some idea of the numbers that we are seeing. So we are upwards now of projecting that there are going to be 15 in co-taught ELA and 12 in co-taught math. Because of that, we really need 2 sections of each for exactly those reasons that Michael was just explaining, that those classes cannot exceed 50% of students on IEPs, and that the multiple sections will really allow for those services in special education to be delivered within the least restrictive environment. Michael, was there anything you wanted to add to this?
No, I think that really captures it.
Oh, it's Ellen. Am I muted?
Yes,
Nope.
Ellen, I can see and hear you.
Okay, so I do have a question, and Michael, thank you for being here. I remember when you came before us a few years ago when we started this, how enthusiastic the special education teachers as well as the gen ed teachers were in this. And you had indicated anecdotally that you were seeing improvements in scoring and not only in special education students, but gen ed students too, because sometimes even if they weren't diagnosed with a disability, they could gravitate and comprehend the SPED instruction. So I'm wondering if after this period of time, now with, we've had testing and we've had MCAS, have we had the time or the ability to really validate those early reports?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Ellen. And I think that while I don't have like a concrete answer necessarily at this time, I know that COVID last year did throw a wrench in some of our, data analysis in a sense, and just how that's shifted. But I do think anecdotally, we continue to see that it does benefit all students, whether you're on an IEP or not. And I think that, as we've really committed, the ICA survey that was recently done, really relates to inclusivity as, that we're committed to, working toward. And I think that this model does allow for that. So I think that, we've had some staff changes as well, which I think plays a factor. We've had some new additions. Our new 7th grade team this year is off to a running start. And, we are committed to providing some PD because, as I mentioned, I think probably when I was on here last speaking about co-teaching, it is like a marriage in a sense, and it does take a long time to build. And so I've seen some, some ups and some downs just in staffing as well. But that's something that I'm committed to working with Barbara now, that she's with us on really looking at some of that data piece related to MCAS scores. But I do think that, we are able to provide the special ed services within the model, so students are able to access the grade level, curriculum.
Right. I think it'll be important for us, as we have to lobby for the budget with the advisory committee and the Board of Selectmen, if we had some data, and it doesn't have to be all inclusive, but if you could pull some out to validate what I think we all feel qualitatively is the right thing to do for our students, it would be very helpful.
And we certainly can do that.
Thank you.
And I think it's important to note that, all students in the classroom really do benefit from the model, that we see it across, all boards of it. So what we are looking for is that this special education teacher can loop with this current 7th grade rising 8th grade class, that it will allow these multiple sections of co-taught math and ELA moving forward. It could also allow for co-taught geometry at Cohasset High School, and will support the students who receive pull-out educational services, because we will have that additional support in. Do we have any further questions about this or anything else, Michael, that you wanted to add in as we partner in this?
No, I think that the addition of the geometry section, if possible, will be really a great benefit at Cohasset High School, as that would look at our, the math graduation requirements as being co-taught across the board, to support students with identified educational disabilities.
Absolutely, as now we have them in the algebras. It would be nice to have that.
Sorry, would this be a licensed special educator as well as a licensed teacher? You might have said that already.
So this, I think this position would be like a licensed special education teacher, but the co-teaching model sees, the licensed special education teacher working, within the same period as the content area ELA and math teacher.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Just speak up because I can't see everyone. I mean, I can scroll through, I guess.
I can actually stop screen sharing now.
Okay, there we go. Any other questions for Mr. Stapleton or Mrs. Wonka?
Just to add that, as you recall, the co-teaching model is a big part of our current strategic plan too. It's something the district holds and has held very important, and it's produced great results. So it's nice to see, us looking at that, and continuing to support that.
And continue to expand it. It's really very exciting.
Yeah.
And, certainly I don't want to veer too far off of that, but this is a little bit of what else I was going to just speak to is that, this is an area that Michael and I are working on together and really looking at because we have a need here, and it enables us to look at all of our co-teaching and the expansion of that, which we really want to do. But the other area that Michael and I are really working on with the secondary principals particularly is in the area of social emotional support, especially because we have the Bright programs at that level. We are really looking at, how can we really creatively support students as they continue through this COVID learning, but also come back from it. And how can we start to looking much further down, the road from next year, continue to expand that kind of programming so that we are a district who really has some inherent programming in place for students who have social, emotional, mental health, some needs for therapeutic programming, and grow in that area as well. So, it's a very exciting time to look at that growth and to look at those things. And I'm very happy to be able to look at it in the not too distant future in the co-teaching model.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mrs. Wonka, Mr. Stapleton. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you,
Presentation.
Barbara.
Okay,
So,
moving on.
Dr. Collins, do you want to continue with your presentation? Dr. Collins? Are
I think she's trying to share maybe.
you trying to share? You're on mute.
Thanks for letting me jump in that.
So many things. All right, here we go. I noticed there are two that I wanted to notice. So. I noticed a typo. Sorry. I'm fixing it while you're watching. All right. I'm going to present. Okay. So the next position is a social studies teacher. We want to increase that 0.5 to a 1.0. So some of the reasons for needing this position is that at the high school level, we need to increase electives. There's been a significant trend over the past 5 years towards academic electives. And so we want to be able to satisfy that need. For example, there were 73 students who requested sociology, 3 sections, and they were only able to do, only to be able to staff for 1 section. In addition, the demand for AP courses is exceeding the seats available. So in 2019-20, we had to use a lottery for students to be able to take AP US history. They had to cap it at 30. And then this year they increased AP US history to 2 sections and had to reduce accelerated to 1 section. So that really limits some scheduling options for students. And then also last year, the 2019-2020 year, AP European history required 2 sections for the first time. And then in 2021, it was a section of 27 students. So the other option too is AP economics and if you remember, not this fall, but the fall before, we brought forward our students. This is an exceptional program, and our students do very well in this course. They score very high. And so they had two section 53 students. So the addition of that 0.5 teacher could potentially allow for also microeconomics, because there is a real desire for that amongst our students at the high school level. And then also there's new state standards. So the standards recommend 2 US history courses, 2 world history courses, and economic electives. So they have, I think, is it 4? I can't see because everybody's on my screen. I want to make sure. And then the elective over the course of the whole year. So right now, the high school offers 1 world history course, 1 section of CP, and then 2 APs for economics. And they would really like to be able to have the students have more options, and that would align to the recommendations. So that's that desire to move from a 0.5 to a 1.0 for social studies. Any questions about that position?
Should say this position has been in our budget requests for multiple years, and it's been sort of deferred for other things.
Yeah, I remember it from last year.
Dr. So may I ask a question about the social studies program? More sort of in general, but along these lines. I'm wondering if like courses like, European history, US history, world history, basically any of the history courses, is the curriculum evolving in a manner in which more exposure is given and perhaps a larger emphasis is placed on female figures and or figures of different ethnic backgrounds? Because traditionally, there's a lot of, certainly history when I was growing up was a lot of male figures and certainly a lot of white males. You had the exceptions, but I'm just wondering, because I think that would go along hand in hand with our overall goal of increasing cultural competency in the district. So just wondering, I don't really need to put you on the spot because it's not totally relevant to what you have here. It's really not relevant at all to what you're actually talking about, but it was a point that I raised in my mind. So just wanted to ask you.
Yeah, and interesting. We just actually met with Dr. Khalees Warnham this morning as a leadership team, really talking about how are we going to look at that pre-K through 12, not just through history, but how are we going to audit our current curriculum, and as we move toward our alignment for pre-K through 12, how are we making sure that that is something that we're looking at? Is it equitable? Are we showing a variety of sides and a variety of lenses, a variety of cultures within what we do? So we're certainly going to be looking at all of that. We are currently starting that, but we will continue. Yes.
Thanks.
So it's Ellen. I have a comment / question. So we don't really have enrollment as part of this first pass of our budget. But if I looked at the October report and I took grades 8 through 11, then to be 9 through 12, a comparison, we're down about 12 students, assuming everybody stays and everybody moves. And my question is, and having had 2 children who subscribe to every social studies elective that there was, because it's a very dynamic, engaging, interesting department with some, not that all of our teachers aren't exceptional, but they just seem to resonate with the kids. And I do recall the AP, results and how strong they were. Do we look at then what kids are not taking? And do we have staff offsets in other areas for other electives? And you don't have to answer this, but it's more of a question, food for thought. Because with the declining enrollment, again, increasing an FTE, it something else has to be declining. Not everything can always be, increasing. There has to be a decline somewhere. And so I would just, suggest that maybe we look at some of our other options that are less subscribed by our students, and see if there's opportunity there.
I know that's probably, you know, a conversation we will have.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and then there we go. And then finally, our last position is a shared position between the middle and high school, a computer science teacher and instructional technology specialist. At our last meeting, Ellen, you brought that up. And so Dr. Sullivan and I looked at each other and Dr. Sullivan said, so what do you think? Can we do this? Can we make this happen? So thank you for doing that. It really made us kind of open up our thought process about what could exist. So when speaking with Lisa Radden, Principal Mills, and Principal Scott about what could this look like? So we originally we're talking at our last meeting about the instructional technology specialist. That is the Cassie O'Brien that we have at the elementary level. We feel strongly that we need that at the middle and high school to create that continuum and really help teachers increase their ability to use technology within their day and to support that aspect. When talking with John and Brian, we looked at what would it look like for a computer science teacher. We obviously want to build this out. We were holding back a little bit because we just hired Lisa Radden, and we thought as we are working through our strategic plan, as she's working with the digital learning committee, we're really going to create that plan to grow that out. Last year, I had already started working with Hingham to hear about and observe their program and how they had grown that. They grew it from the bottom up. So they grew it from kindergarten up. And when I went and visited them, they were now moving it into the 6th grade, that in growing it all the way up into the high school. So if we were to add this 0.5 computer science to this position, that would start in 6th grade. So that position would be at the middle school, and it would take all of the work that's been happening at the elementary school. So they've already started coding. They're already doing some robotics. All of that would then continue into 6th grade, and we would grow that out, and it would continue to grow into the high school. So it would take us a couple of years to get the computer science at the middle and then into the high school. And Principal Mills was looking at the fact that it would give the students a choice between art and computer programming. And they would, 6th grade would have that choice. So that is where we are at with the position for instructional technology specialist and computer science teacher. We know that we need to move forward, and we know we need to grow that. And this would be the beginning of. So questions about this?
This is Lydia. I just think it's such a great opportunity to continue the foundation that's being built at the elementary level. I know that my kids are pretty jazzed about like the coding programs. And after Mr. Saluti teaches his remote class, my daughter then like Zooms my dad and teaches him using the coding that they're doing. So it's fun. And I just feel like to be able to build on that momentum is so important when the kids have a level of enthusiasm about it. It's more exciting and easier to learn when you're psyched about it. So I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I really so enjoy it. And when the kids are using Scratch Junior, they don't even know. I mean, just to see how articulate they are in the language, really impressive at such a young age. So I think it would be really great to be able to grow that up.
I think it's clear we need a couple things. We need to also look at how we're approaching the curriculum standards within other subjects.
Mm-hmm.
And we clearly need a vertical path for enhanced technology offerings to further our students. There's no question about it. I think this gives us the beginning of that leverage that we have to build over the coming years. It's very, very due.
Right. Because ultimately, we would like to move that instructional technology specialist to a 1.0, move the computer science to 1.0. So that's our goal, is to continue to grow that out. Any questions about that? All right. I believe that is it. I believe. Make sure I'm right. Yes. Good.
So,
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, Ellen.
yeah, Dr. Scollins, so those are the only new positions that the district is advocating for. So it's 3.0 new FTEs.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so nothing at the elementary levels.
No.
No, and you know, technically it's 4.0 because our director of technology was not in our current budget. So that adds, last year we had 5.3, so this year it's going to be 4.0 FTEs.
That's correct. Well,
Well-
yeah, if you look at it like that, yes.
Yeah, because, yeah,
I hear you. I'm not saying it's wrong. Yes,
okay.
you're right.
And thank you for the computer science. I think, I understand, you know, Mrs. Radden is new and wants to build a program, but maybe this is the impetus to get it going. I appreciate the creative way you approached it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
No,
it needs to be done. We're trying to build a whole structure around it. But it does need to happen. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes,
Moving on.
I think that's it for our presentations regarding the line item budget, correct? So Chair McClellan, if you'd like me to have Sue move on to the capital budget prioritization, we can do that.
Yes, let's do that. And then we have gifts and
You always say it's nice when we have gifts, right? We should always have
yes.
gifts. Go ahead, Sue, if you'd like to share the capital budget prioritization. You may do so. Perfect.
So here's the capital list. We have to now do some prioritizing as a group and have a discussion on, you know, how we want to prioritize this list because they're all priorities right now. I did speak to facilities today, and again, priority for at least coming from the facilities was the middle school, high school gym, air handlers, and I think it's Deer Hill. No, the Osgood fire sprinkler heads. So he said those were the two things that really sat high on their priority list. I know we got the GMAX report back on the high school track and turf. It basically said we're within the average range that we need to be, which we were all a little surprised by. I have designs coming so I can get a quote for the plumbing on the high school science. We located the blueprints and the plans in the archives, and now we have someone designing what the room should look like, so we can actually finally get a quote or a price on what that's going to cost us. So that's work in progress. And I don't know if there's anything else you need to, you want me to add, or you need to add to this, but we need to prioritize.
I have a question only because this is obviously, we discussed this on our facilities tour a couple months ago. And I'm just curious, on that tour, some littler projects came up that I guess aren't capital budget, like the stalls at the Osgood that don't lock and stuff like that.
Right.
And I just don't want that to disappear. My insider at the Osgood told me they continue to not lock. And so I don't know if that has a place. It's not necessarily like a big budget item, but just those little projects, I just don't want those to disappear. So I'm just saying it out loud right now.
Yeah,
No,
that
they're
should
not.
that should be a smaller non-capital item, but that would be something we could work on, Sue.
Okay.
I would imagine.
Yes, that was the other thing that Nick had added today, the replacing the flooring in the cove and the base of the gym. He said if there was something that he could take off, it would be that, because he feels that facilities can do that on their own through their own budgets. But it's up to the school committee actually what we want to prioritize and put forward.
So I have a couple of comments and questions. First, we know the bus lease is a no-brainer. It has to happen. It's the third year of the lease. So that automatically has to get funded. The capital budgets requested us to look at our inventory of Chromebooks. We're coming back, it looks like the exact same number, 540 for a 3-year lease. They really asked us to dive into, is 540 the right number? Is it too low? Is it too high? And from what Susan Franklin said on capital budgets, after the 3-year lease, we essentially own them for $1. And the biggest issue with Chromebooks is the life or the age of the batteries, how long they last. So I don't know if that number has been looked at for Chromebooks. I had a conversation, I reached out to Situate, to the athletic director, who put me in touch with the previous athletic director who oversaw the project. Situate replaced the carpet on their existing football, lacrosse field turf and redid the entire track. The track was a foot off from side to side, and they added 2 new turf fields up behind the high school. And I asked them how it was funded. The substructure of the 2 new turf fields and the track replacement were funded by CPC, the Community Preservation Commission. The carpet, the replacement on the existing turf field was bonded by the town. And so I know CPC and capital budgets is looking to us for how do we want to handle this? And I would advocate that we put the entire high school track replacement of $495,000 to CPC and get a write-up to them, and let them come back and tell us, well, we can do, X amount or Y amount. I think the track replacement is the priority over the turf. We heard from one of the capital budget members who had walked the track that day that he didn't see anything wrong with it. Well, in the wintertime when it contracts, you're not going to see the cracks and fissures
I was thinking that.
in the asphalt that you see in the heat of the summer. I know that there was concern about last spring, if we were going to even have a home track if COVID hadn't hit, because the league had concerns about the inside lane and where the track met the turf in terms of divots and cracking and obstructions. It's not ideal to space out. It's better to do both projects at one time because you don't use up 2 summers replacing them. But I would recommend that we ask the town to bond the turf replacement, and if we had to defer it for a year, so be it. I know that the town manager feels very strongly about replacing the turf, and I think we should say, yes, we'd like you to bond that for us. I think the fire sprinkler heads is a safety issue, and that has to go. I mean, we have to have it fixed. I just don't think there's any way around it. I think if I'm remembering correctly, they went to replace the parts and there's no more parts or something to that effect. And I wouldn't want to, be there when we needed them and they didn't function. I know that capital budgets asked for more detail on the pilot program, classroom technology. Essentially, that's 8 classrooms at $8,000 a classroom in terms of, what we're going to do. And I don't know if Lisa's had a chance to dive into that or not.
Yeah, she has a whole kind of timeline for that, Ellen, that will build up to that presentation in March.
Okay,
So,
great.
Yep, and she's already met with her digital learning team at least once, maybe twice.
So from what capital budgets told us, they have about $2 million for the whole town. And I think, what's the total on this list? 227?
Yeah, it's I don't know, Sue, can you go down? How much is it? Just I can look at. I think you're right, Alan.
I know, I also know, I know Nick didn't put the Deer Hill rooftop air handlers, on his priority list, but he did say that it's much more beneficial to do both Deer Hill and the middle high school at the same time,
Did.
with the same vendors, with the same, you get some economies with that, and you get common technology. And again, that's a big enough ticket item together that could be a bonded item for the town and not come straight out of capital. So, I think we should probably meet with Chris Senior and ask him how much is he willing to bond. He's willing to bond the track, and that's $1,250,000 between the track and the middle high school gym and the Deer Hill. And
Yeah,
that's,
those are huge items, and that's a huge consideration there. It would certainly, make this list more tenable, I would say.
Okay, so is the next step then for a meeting with Chris Senior to get scheduled to discuss that?
Well, do we need to prioritize, Sue, the other items too? Like, we kind of need I don't know if we want to do it here or in finance and facilities, but we need sort of a pecking order, 1 through whatever it is. That's really
We
what
do.
we want, right?
That's what they're looking for, yes.
Do you
Yeah,
think
and
that would
I
be better
think-
accomplished in finance and facilities, or what do you think?
I would prefer the whole committee to do it, because I think it's important that we're all in agreement, as opposed to just subcommittee. I mean,
So if we do that, you would like to do that now, right? That's what we're talking about, doing it now. So then we do that assuming that nothing's getting bonded by the town, or assuming that one or the, I mean, how do we, I think the Deer Hill and middle high school air handlers are also essential, right? But you're saying that potentially maybe the town would consider bonding that, and that takes $750 off the top, right? And so it might influence the prioritization of the rest of the list if that were to come off of it.
right, but even if we took $1,250,000 off the list and had the town bond it, we're still at $1,500,000, right? Give or take. That still needs to be prioritized. And so I'll just share, to get the conversation going, how I see it. I see bus lease number 1, fire sprinkler heads at Osgood number 2. The air handlers, both schools combined, number 3. Chromebooks number 4, but that we have to get a better number. I think the dust collection system in the wood shop, I was kind of appalled at that when we did the walkthrough. Would come next, and I forgot what number we were on.
We're on 5, Ellen. What did you have us for?
She had Chromebooks. I've got a list.
Chromebooks.
Chromebooks number 4. Yeah, dust collection number 5. Pilot program classroom technology, I would put number 6. I do plumbing at the high school science room, number 7.
Even before the bus parking lot?
Well, here's my thought on the bus parking lot, Craig. It's gonna be a big project, and worse comes to worse, all right, and it's not gonna be popular, but we can utilize the student parking lot and take up 2 lanes of student parking, which is a privilege, it's not a right, and use that. I think to me, the science room, to have a science class that needs a lab and not have a lab. And maybe that's why we're not oversubscribed in science electives, because we don't have a bona fide lab. Is very important. And I think the bus parking lot becomes a town issue, to have the town help us figure it out. And if kids have to park up at Milliken, then they have to park up at Milliken. If we have to do many schools do lotteries. You know, we kind of say every kid who drives a car, you know, you can have a place to park. And maybe for a year or so, we have a lottery, or it goes by seniority, seniors, you know, on down. Maybe kids carpool and you don't see 6 friends show up in 6 cars. It's not unheard of in other districts. And then, you know, this needs a study. We don't have space. We don't have location. We don't have any site work done. We don't have any strategic plan done for, and when I say we, not just the school district, but the town, for this. And so I just think it's not going to happen anyway, even if we put $200,000, you know, if we bump it up the priority list. But that's just how I feel about it.
No, I think it's a good perspective. Plus, we're considering, you know, in the not too distant future, you know, possibly, you know, building in a different footprint, things like that. So it might not be a good expenditure of $200,000 if we can, you know, get away with a few more years of doing what you said, figuring out an alternative solution to it. But okay, it just I know it's just always an issue where we're putting those things. That's all.
Yeah, and you know, maybe we go to Chris and we ask him for however much money, 30, 40, $50,000 to do it this properly, to do the proper site work, to do the proper investigatory things that need to be done. And you know, and it's not going to happen by September anyway. I mean, let's just be honest. This gets voted on at the end of April, beginning of May, whenever town meeting is. It's not going to happen by the beginning of school. How long have we been waiting for the courtyard doors at the Deer Hill?
No, don't get me started on that. All right.
No, I know, but I'm just saying. So I don't know where I left off. I kind of look at it.
Number 7, the plumbing at the high school science room. You numbered that 7, and I interrupted you with the bus parking lot. So.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And you know, we said it at capital budgets. It's like you're asking us to choose as a school committee and a school district between academic needs that we have to enhance the learning of our children and our structures, which are assets of the town of Cohasset that everybody should have a vested interest in. And we shouldn't have to choose. We shouldn't have to choose between a science room and painting. We shouldn't have to choose between technology and a sidewalk, but we do. You know, and I think we have spent a lot, rightfully so, on facilities. I think the town has been supportive, not to the nth degree, but supportive. And I think some of these academic things, what happens inside the building has to be attended to.
So just at the 7, like if we just go through those first 7, that puts you at like 1.1 million.
Yeah, my number 8 would be the flooring in the cove base in the gym. You know, the building security fobs, if we could get that money now, it would be helpful now. But I'm kind of banking on the fact that we're back in school full time in September and we're not going to need them.
And
You know,
the
not that it wouldn't be nice to have access, but.
Flooring and the code base are also, I mean, it's a big aesthetic issue, but it's mainly an aesthetic issue right now. Just
Yeah.
such a prominent spot. You know, it says a lot. It's really the introduction to our district for many folks because it's in such a prominent place.
Yeah. I mean, as is the asphalt road from Pond Street, as is the sidewalk and the curbing. that whole administrative driveway to the athletic complex is people's first impression. But as was said at Capitol, you know, they're calling our driveway a road and comparing it to common roadways in Cohasset that are in worse shape.
That's you.
But that's not a road, it's a driveway. So, and the sidewalk and the curbing was phase 3 of a 3-year project.
Yeah, and the sidewalk and curbing, again, I mean, for what it's worth, safety has to rule the day, and there is some safety concerns with some of those potholes. A lot of it was, you know, in the curbing from a tripping hazard was patched or, you know, but it still is, to me, that does have a safety component to it.
Yeah.
Sue, did you say that the flooring in Cove Base, that there was a thought that it wasn't a cap? What did you mention about that a few moments ago? Didn't you say something like, oh, people are feeling like it could be done differently, or no, am I misunderstanding that?
When I talked to Nick this morning, he thought that the facilities department could take that off the capital list and get it done themselves, because they'd like to do some painting and do the whole area over. But that was just Nick's thought. Because he's, you know, he didn't see it as being a safety hazard at this point. It was more, you know, aesthetics is like Pat said, that, and, you know, some of the cracking in the floor.
So, you know, I'm no contractor, but if we look at the $71,000 we spent on the Dairy Hill to retile every floor and put in a new Cove Base, I'm gonna guess that square footage is a lot more than the upper and lower lobbies that we're talking about. Unless you say Nick has got firm pricing on this.
I don't think he's done any pricing on it.
Yeah, and didn't he say the tile that was used in the Dare Hill was less expensive and it's the low maintenance kind?
It's a low maintenance kind, but I don't know if it was less expensive. That's the kind you don't have to wax.
Right.
Wouldn't it be a little, wasn't it a little more?
I think it was a little more money because of the non-waxing.
Non-waxing, all right. Well, then put that at the bottom of the list and we'll just, you know, maybe our janitors can do the painting and next, you know, maybe we can split that. We do have janitors all summer long.
Yeah.
And they've done a good job at, you know, managing Deer Hill. Alex has been very successful with her summer staff getting painting done.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it's, you know, it's a tough task, but.
When leaving the bus parking lot and the track and turf issue off the list, it looks like the prioritization is bus lease, fire and sprinkler heads, the air handlers at both buildings that are on the list, Chromebooks, dust collection system, the technology pilot program, plumbing in the science room, say sidewalk, road, and the flooring in Cove Base.
What about the remaining doors at the schools? I feel like I don't know, when we were on our tour, the principals made a great point, and like the buildings are just being used differently now. I think, you know, like COVID introduced a new way to flow through the buildings. So I mean, it makes sense to be able to get in and out of those doors.
It's important. I mean, this is why this task is so difficult, right? Because that does enable folks to come in and out, to do outdoor classrooms, all of that, without having to, you know, we don't want anybody propping doors, but having to, you know, radio in to get the door opened, or, you know, maybe they do prop it, it's security risk. So in this current climate, it's definitely a need. I guess the question is, you know, how it'll always, they're useful. It's a useful, fobs, it's gonna be useful to help our students if we get them, but how important is it if we do go back to a more traditional model, I guess is the question, based on our
Yeah.
needs.
And are there grants? I mean, last year from Senator O'Connor, we got a security grant for some additional interior security cameras. So, can we look for a grant, a security grant, and inquire of him? Is there money out there for that we could do, to get the fobs?
I guess I just like to think that, yes, we may shift back to a more full-time model, but I would hope that maybe going outside and being more flexible in our learning space would remain. And just from a security point of view, I would much rather have teachers have a fob to get in and out than be propping a door and then it's forgotten and then it's kind of, like the rock or brick or random whatever bends a door. There's so many things that I just feel like the security of our school and the access to our school is so important that it's tight and not, permeable without a little boop to get in.
Correct.
Anybody else?
So let's
Diminishing.
try and just come up with it. So what's the definitive numbering here? We're going to experience diminishing returns here soon because we're getting a little long in the tooth here. So I think we all agreed that. So did anyone have? Because I don't have a full complete list here. I sort of tailed off at 8 with replace sidewalks. So what is the? Can we just go through it from the top and see if we can just complete this?
Mm-hmm.
Lydia, I think you mentioned. Excuse me, Ms. St. Ange. You mentioned you had them written down. Or was it Mrs. Caleri?
I do have them written down. What Mrs. Maritz had just said was number 1, bus lease. Number 2, replace fire sprinkler heads at Osgood.
Yep.
3 was both Deer Hill and Middle High School rooftop air handlers. 4, replace aging Chromebooks. 5, dust collection system in the wood shop.
Yep.
6, pilot program classroom technology. 7, plumbing at high school science room. 8, replace sidewalks. And then we kind of lost numbers and got more conversational.
So I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you with the fobs. I mean, I think that's important. I completely agree with you because you want to encourage outdoor learning. You want to encourage safe egress and ingress from the buildings in sort of a consistent, uniform way. I think that should be 9, if not 8, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, does anyone have any major objections to that? I just want to try and get through this.
I would put it as 8.
I think I'd rather 8. I feel like, when we tell people don't let someone in, you need to go through the front door and then you get stuck outside and knock on a door and then ask them to let you in. It's like, let's stick with our procedures and keep things safe.
Great, let's put that as 8. The asphalt road goes to 9. Sidewalk and curbing or flooring. The first and second floor of the high school, the gym entryway. Which one would be 10? Do we want to do the sidewalk as 10 or do we want to do the replace the flooring?
Sidewalk, because didn't we say
Sidewalk.
maintenance can do?
Yeah, I would do sidewalk for 10. It's more of
Okay,
a safety.
sidewalk, okay.
And then possibly facilities could do flooring and cove base. It's a possibility.
Okay,
Right. So
All
where
right,
does that
so-
leave us?
well, the bus parking lot, which we discussed, and the high school track replacement and turf replacement, which we discussed.
It's everything, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
So
okay,
basically, I'll
Thank
just
you.
prioritize this list, number it, update it, and we have it ready to go.
Well, we still have questions that have to be answered before we
Oh.
send it off.
Yeah. Oh, no,
Yeah,
I didn't
okay.
mean sending it off. I just meant at least we're at that point, we've prioritized. Because yes, I mean, they had a lot of questions. I have that list of questions you sent out, Ellen, that I want to hopefully have all the answers before we go back to Capitol.
And the bonding question is a huge question.
Right,
My
mine-
question?
my understanding is it's a tentative prioritization based on the, I mean, Ellen pointed out, Mrs. Mara pointed out a number of issues that we want to explore before we can truly understand and make an informed decision what is, you know, numbered where, you know, where things lie in the prioritization list. But for now, I mean, I think we found out, you know, we've at least arrived at a preliminary prioritization schedule here. And I don't know that more can be done now without the answer to some of the questions posed that Mrs. Marr raised.
Correct.
So I think it's much we can do tonight. Okay, so
Tough task. That was a tough one.
yeah. So Ms. Owen, are we moving on to gifts at this point?
We are.
All right. Why don't you let's just go through them one by one. We'll take a vote after each one.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, let's see.
The CEF gifts, do you want to talk about these, Dr. Collins?
It doesn't matter who does it.
Sure. So these are the grants from the CEF, and so and it was nice because we still were able to do some things even within COVID. So excuse me, Susie Corkum had written a grant for root robotics and coding grant, which has been a passion of hers, and the kids really enjoy it. So so that was toward all of some of the things that she needed. We're going to continue some of these throughout the next year, but that's been fun, and those are and a continuation of some of Susie's work. And then we have yoga at Deer Hill, and that was 3rd grade. We are doing some of it, but there's some PD that goes along with it, but really we can't have people come in right now. So that will continue on also for the following year. And then the cafeteria AV system, that was very exciting, and that is up and running, and they've been able to use that. So thank you so much. And then the middle school, Laura Swartz in art did some clock building. So her materials were, as you can see, very low end, but at the same time, it was a really great program. And then also the hike, bike, and like your watershed, and intro into GIS and Cohasset stewardship collaboration with Stellwagen Bank and National Marine Sanctuary. So they're doing some nice partnership with CSCR, which they will continue to do. So a huge thank you to the CEF for all of those grants. And it continues with elementary rhythm band with in music with Joe Bradley. And that's also a continuation with some rhythm materials that they need. There's a ukulele program with John DeWall. Everybody loves a ukulele. It's very popular. So, so that's a wonderful way for them to learn. And then we have the IQWST lab sensors. So these are sensors that are used in the science, and they are vernier, and they're wonderful. The kids can they can use them to check for pressure. They can use it for velocity. There's a variety of things that they can use, and they're very user-friendly. I actually have them in my previous district at the elementary level, and students at that level can use them. So as they move up in age, it's unbelievable what they can do with them. So that was a huge thank you. So a very wonderful gift from the Cohasset Educational Foundation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cohasset Education, for all you do for Cohasset.
Absolutely.
Couldn't imagine doing these without you. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion on the floor to accept that generous gift from the CEF, who we're very lucky to have?
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. St. Ange. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Caleri. All in favor? Roll call. Mrs. Caleri?
Aye.
Mr. Kearney?
Aye.
Ms. Mar?
Aye.
Ms. St. Ange?
Aye.
Aye. Craig McClellan. Motion unanimously passes. The gift is accepted. Thank you, CEF. What is the next gift that we're looking at?
The PSO grants.
ESO grants. Do you want me to take this one?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, it's just checked for $6,537 dollars from the PSO to cover the following. And you can see it here, mobile sound carts for $1,100, snowshoes, 2460 speaker system for music, $765, Netflix subscription, all schools. 216 Story Pirates, 1,500, and music equipment, 480, to total the 6,537.65. And I
I'm just-
think
I'm just dying to know what the snowshoes are being used for. What's that?
Snowshoeing, Mrs. St. Ange.
Oh yeah, with our
Yes.
no.
So that is, those are our phys ed teachers at the,
Gotcha.
those are
at the
phys ed.
at the middle and high school level, and they're, that's an activity. It's a great one.
It is.
And the Netflix, I should say, remember we have, one of the things that we have at Deer Hill is we have a screen that students are able to watch during lunch, so they can pick, educational offerings to show on the big screen to try to keep them activated. So that's been a good thing too. Didn't want that to sound strange, the Netflix, yeah.
So I was being sarcastic, but honestly, where they go outside in the schoolyard or something and just run around in snowshoes.
They do. They
Well,
go on the
when it
track.
snows.
Yeah, they can go out in the turf and all. Yeah, when there's snow.
When there's snow, we need snow.
Yeah, it's a great workout. So
Snowshoeing in May, isn't that fun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they also issued us a second check for $5,500, and that was going to, where is it going to? Middle and high school approved
Yeah.
grant of 10 iPads, pencils, covers, notability app, and Apple Care
Mhm.
for $5,500.
Some math work too, right? Supplementing some of our math, right?
yes.
Okay, so let's just there's a total of my God, what is the total?
5,500,
Don't help me, please.
6,537.
12,037.65.
12,037.65, correct.
All right. So there's a total of $12,037.65
That's
in gifts from the PSO, our parent school organization. Is there a motion on the floor to approve these very generous gifts?
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Cleary. Is there a second?
Second,
Seconded by Mrs. Marr. All in favor, roll call. Mrs. Cleary,
Aye.
Mr. Kearney,
Aye.
Mrs. Marr,
aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Hi.
Aye, Craig McClellan. That gift is unanimously accepted. Thank you, PSO. Ms. Owen, does that conclude the finance report?
Yes, it does.
Dr.
Thank
Sullivan?
you.
Thank you. Dr. Sullivan, from your end, does that conclude the finance report?
That sure does, Craig.
All right, moving on to the school committee comments and communication. Recommended policy revisions.
All right, so we continue our work. I think you all saw Jennifer sent us an email. The changes made from section B are now reflected in the online policy manual. And there's been a slight change due to our vote last meeting in the table of contents in section C. So now on to section D. We compiled the list that was included in your meeting packet. And the recommendations are to include 3 policies that are not currently in our manual, but are in the mask reference manual, and to delete 1 policy that is in ours. Mrs. Marr, I thought you might know the answer to this question. I couldn't find a town charter online. Do you know anything about that? And no? All right. So I'll ask. So how about this? How about if we leave policy DBG aside, and I will do some more investigating with the town on that, but is there any discussion about DBD, DEC, or DJG? No discussion. Okay. So so let's take a motion to accept the changes referenced here, if anyone's comfortable doing that. Minus policy DBG, which we will retain for next meeting, and I will report on my progress with the town.
So moved.
Seconded. Sorry, slow processing.
All right. Okay.
Okay, all in favor? Mrs. Cleary? Mr. Kearney?
Aye.
Mrs. Mar?
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange?
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan, motion unanimously passes. So those policy changes are adopted.
Thank you. I just have one other thing to mention. We have our next meeting on Monday and we will be meeting at 6 o'clock. The agenda is not posted just yet, I don't think, but also we are going to be, it might be posted. I don't know. I was just looking for the Zoom link earlier and I found it on an old agenda, which may just be because I was not efficiently.
I think it is. I get the agenda texts and I believe, hello, I believe it was sent out today.
But we are actually also going to transition, since Lydia and I are also the members of the recently formed communications subcommittee. We're going to begin that committee's work at 6:30 on Monday also. So we're going to have 2 back-to-back meetings and we'll report back at our next full committee meeting on our progress.
Sounds like fun. Thank you for that, Mrs. Cleary. I shall be there.
Great.
Okay, anyone else? Why don't we just go around here? Where were we? Mr. Kearney, any updates from you, sir?
The JV girls basketball team beat Rockland tonight, 28-24.
Very nice.
Yeah, I didn't get I can't ask, I've been asking my kids the varsity score. No one seems to know how to get it, so I don't know the varsity score, but I know the JV girls won.
Well, congrats to them. Mrs. Mar, any updates from you?
No, I shared the info on the track and how Situate
That's right.
handled it. Just backtrack 1 second. Mrs. Colery, I think the only budgetary policy that I'm aware of that the town has is their fiscal policy of 2012. And that might be it on how the budget is developed and amended and processed. But Don Pyatt could tell you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, is that all, Mrs. Mar? Okay. Where are we now? Mrs. St. Ange?
Yes, I did attend the Alternative Energy Committee meeting. There was kind of a, I don't know, I guess an update, non-update on solar, because questions have been sent out to the companies who have been tasked with putting together designs, and we're just waiting to hear back from them. So I'll let you know when we hear back. And then Michelle Leary had very recently received an email about electric buses, and there was information forthcoming. So I guess that's kind of more non-information, but I just think it's something to kind of keep on our minds as we look at our bus needs of the future. So there will be more information about that soon, it sounded like, based on the email she had received.
Okay. I think that leaves me. I cannot think of any updates. I attended a few meetings, PSO meetings, school council meetings. I don't have any real updates to share. So with that, move on to the next item, which is either the School Facilities Committee. I think there's now 4. I think there's more now, 4 people. So we need one more to get things going. And Mr. Kearney indicated that he may know some folks that want to do that. So
Yes, I think we have 5, Craig.
oh, well, that would be wonderful. So be looking
Yeah.
forward to that. And maybe we can remove that from our agenda every single time if we get that thing up and going. And then moving on, unless anyone has anything to add there. Well, I guess we already did our reports. So that's it. I don't think we have any minutes to approve tonight. So there are no topics that have not been reasonably anticipated in 48 hours of the meeting. And there was a separate executive session. So at this point, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn made by Mrs. Colery. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. St. Ange and Mrs. Marr simultaneously. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Kearney,
Aye.
Mrs. Marr,
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye. Craig McClellan, thank you all so much for your time. The meeting is adjourned. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
night,
Well, very much.
Good night, thank you.
Right.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.